On this, the first Sunday after Epiphany, where for a short period of time we changed to the more mundane green color once again in our liturgical colors, we may keep in mind certain important keynotes. One of these undoubtedly would be that in view of the national holiday tomorrow of the death, martyrdom for an important cause of the late Dr. Martin Luther King's, we may keep in mind the entire mysterious and probably also controversial issue of martyrdom. Now, as you undoubtedly are aware of, even if not in great detail, there were a heck of a lot of martyrs in the early Christian history. Because the Christians were a kind of a bunch of weirdos who didn't want to cooperate with hardly anything that the state wanted. If the emperor wanted them to wear a mask, they didn't wear them on, and there may be a whole bunch of other things. Emperor wanted them to have an inoculation or whatever they call it. They wouldn't take any, so they were killed. And moreover, they didn't even have to be Christians to be then denominated saints, because their death was considered a baptism of blood. Now, I would rather not be baptized in blood, and I'm kind of happy I was baptized in water, but that's an entirely different matter. However, there is so very often, in all kinds of historical data concerning religious and spiritual matters, there is always something of an occult, of a magical, mystical nature that is present if we choose to pay attention to it. And so one thing that we have here, of course, is that the blood of the martyrs, as one saying had it, I could regurgitate it to you in Latin, but I don't think it would do all that much good. But is that the blood of the martyrs built the church. So that, let's say, those who have died for the higher cause, that particular event is of considerable significance. Now, I don't want to go back to all the old martyrs. Practically all the apostles are martyrs, and everything else, or our own martyrs, perhaps beginning with the Holy Prophet Mani, but to the principle of the issue as such, which I think is quite important. I think it's built into the fabric of the universe. You may think that that's too large, too big an order, big a statement, but it definitely seems that way, that those who die for a cause, a particular issue, a particular principle, and thus sacrifice their lives, their physical lives for that cause, do make a very significant, a very important contribution to the cause to which they have offered their lives. And we can really see this even in comparatively recent times. Now, I have a friend whose name appears in some of the books, who lives in Turkey, what a place to live, except at Thanksgiving, you know. But who has just on Christmas Eve been married in St. Petersburg to a lady whom he was affianced for a long, long time, and now finally the marriage came to fruition and so forth. And so he emails to us and communicates with us in various ways. And he said, for instance, that last summer, I think it's in August, when the commemoration of the martyrdom of Tsar Nicholas and the Tsaritsa Alexandra and their children is commemorated in Russia, that there were several 100,000 of people in the street in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. Hail to the martyrs, hail to the martyrs. And so the death of good people for a good cause is never in vain. You may not see it right away. You say, oh dear, wouldn't it have been better if this particular good person had lived longer and so forth? Well, maybe so, but in the larger perspective, there are occult and mystical forces that take place. And somehow, I cannot even begin to attempt to tell you why, but there is abundant evidence to that effect, that when the life of someone is given to a particular cause, to a particular issue, that this has a great effect in the long run. Now, you know, I don't want to go through all kinds of circumstances and events, but let us say, certainly true in the case of Tsar Nicholas and the Tsaritsa. You know, the wife of a Tsar is not a Tsarina, okay? Let's use the right words. It's a Tsaritsa. A Tsarina is an empress in Russia in her own right, like Catherine the Second and others. In any event, people whose lives were taken really in the cause of their mission, of their position in the world and in society. And this is of great importance, of great meaning. And this, we can see this in all kinds of situations. For instance, maybe my historical exegesis does not match yours, but had it not been for what is commonly called the Holocaust, namely the slaughter of the millions of Jewish people by Hitler's minions in World War II, I bet you that the state of Israel would not have been established, or would not have been established for quite a few years and decades later. The sacrifice, self-sacrifice, what greater self-sacrifice can you have but to have yourself go away in the pursuit of your cause? And the sacrifice of the millions of people had aroused the conscience, the sympathy of the world, and the state of Israel came to be established. And as always, nothing in this world is ever established that does not also cause some difficulty. So quite a few people there were not terribly happy of the establishment of that state. But these things have to be kept in mind. And that is why it has been said that the blood of the martyrs builds the church. When people's lives are taken away for a spiritual cause, somehow that spiritual cause acquires the energy, the power to come down to earth and to do things. That sounds very strange, but look at all the cultures, look at all the societies in the history of the world that in one way or the other practiced a rather distasteful thing called human sacrifice. But even behind that there is the idea that when the life is given up, when the blood is shed for a particular cause, that cause is thereby strengthened immeasurably. Why and how this is, it's difficult to tell. But that is why the martyrs have a place of honor in all the in the calendar, in the commemoration of the saints and so forth. Obviously because they gave their life, but that act of giving one's life in turn has been productive of great and marvelous events and circumstances. You know, James wrote in August, I think it is the commemoration of the death of the Tsar Nicholas and Tsaritsa Alexandra and of the children. He says several 100,000 people were on the streets of Moscow and St. Petersburg, carrying the banners, holding up the icons, and he sent me a couple of little icons of the royal martyrs, shall we say, and it says the devotion to Russian history and to the great figures therein, including the martyrs, the imperial family, was just really at an absolute apex. And you see, these things are important. This is part of the way in which the martyrs make their own very final and very difficult contribution to certain causes. And so I think that is the way that we need to consider people like Martin Luther King and others. They gave more than anybody else to their cause. And their cause, in turn, had received considerable input, a considerable spiritual shot in the arm as the result of their sacrifice. And so what does this mean? Does it mean that we want to go out and have our opponents shoot us or burn us at the stake once again in history? You know, no, that is obviously not the case. But I think it means that we should keep in mind that if we really found something great, something extremely valuable, something extremely important in the Gnosis, and not just something that we found in a book and that we looked at, then we should offer in the manner that it may be required of us at that time. We should offer our life to that. Because once we do that, then all sorts of subsequent holy things can occur. We should always be here offering what we have to the ineffable greatness. Because everything else, our very lives, our good things that we experience in life, all the nice, the lovely people whom we have met in life and so forth, these are all gifts to us from above. We didn't earn them. You can't earn the good. The good comes to you because it wants to, and because it feels that it should come to you. And so this is the way we have to look at the people whose lives were offered and taken in a particular important cause that they have represented. And we should be willing to give what we have, what we are, what we may become to the cause. The cause being the cause of gnosis and of the ineffable greatness toward which we aspire. And at the same time, obviously, as has been the case from the beginning, we should give thanks to those who have given all that they had, all that they were, their very life, their very earthly being, to something that they believed in and that they wanted to, that they considered was important enough to, if necessary, to sacrifice their lives, their physical lives, in order to make these causes develop and become something. And so indeed it is the blood of the martyrs that builds various important causes in the world. The details of that are not important. I would say it's a very, very ancient tradition that goes back to sort of shamanistic times, that there is a blood sacrifice, sometimes even the human sacrifice. That's sort of the unconscious way of this curious mystery to manifest. But there are the conscious ways, which are always to be preferred to the unconscious ways, that need to be kept in mind. And so let us then be today aware of these things, that there have been dedicated great souls whose life was taken in service of their cause, of what they were trying to establish in the world, in the nature of justice and so forth. I don't want to be nasty, but let me put it that way. The fact that various people, including the martyr to whom this weekend is dedicated, gave their lives to their cause, impresses me way a lot more than thousands of people marching around in demonstrations on the street. If you are willing to put yourself out in such a vulnerable position that you might bite the dust for your cause, that is something else. So we need perhaps to ask ourselves if there are various issues, there are various causes, various developments in the world. There always are, because we live in a world that is the embodiment of imperfections. So there are always such things in the world. But once we see that, and we see what people, devoted and holy people, holy in the ultimate sense of the word, will offer including their lives to these causes, there I think we might bow our heads and say, yes, thank you. Because such events have their repercussions. They have their following. They have their results. And those results are what matters. It's always terribly regrettable when a good person is taken out of this life. But it is certainly even more important when such an event in turn is tied in with the rectification of bad things, of persecution and injustice and things of that sort. And when some of the blood acts like a baptism or water and washes away the bad and perhaps makes room for something good. So let's keep these things in mind, because the, let's say, the issue of martyrdom is one that is certainly very, very much part of the history of the Christian faith and of many other faiths. I mean, look at Islam, for instance. I'm not going to start giving you a lesson now in Middle Eastern religions, but let's say the very next generation after the Prophet Muhammad, his grandchildren, Hassan and Hussein, were cruelly executed by people who professed the religion of Muhammad himself. You know, terrible things. And so the baptism of blood, the martyrdom, the way that, you know, these things happen on earth is an important one to remember. And we also, you know, we also have to offer, hopefully not in a bloody way at this point, our own lives as a sacrifice to the greater. Sacrificium means making sacred. So our lives and the lives of many people in this world can be made sacred by offering them to the service and the accomplishment and the aiding of something good and great and just. And if we can keep that in mind, then we can apply that to various circumstances of life and of history, and thereby acquire a certain type of gnosis, so that we might say that there is maybe even the gnosis of blood, you see, because the life force and the sacrificing of the life force to a greater cause, greater than itself, is a high and holy and wonderful thing. And that needs to be kept in mind. We are so attached to physical life nowadays. Oh dear, I'm going to get such and such a virus and it's going to kill me. Well, maybe it will, and then again maybe it won't. Moreover, if indeed the universal teachings of the esoteric tradition have some weight, you know, I have a feeling that you've gone through that sort of thing before. You think you're going to die, well, you did it before. So don't be that afraid. You're familiar with that. You're the old guy with the big sigh. You know, you know him and he knows you, and says, "Oh well, here you are once again. Come on, I'll take you." You know, it's so. Maybe these are jesting a little bit about serious things, but the worst thing that can happen to us is, in any situation, that we're going to die. So is that really that bad? I ask you. Yeah? Probably not. And moreover, you know what? We're going to find out. We're going to find out, that's for sure. But the important matter is really that we sacrifice our lives, which can be done in other than bloody ways, by doing, by being here, by trying to serve the causes that we serve, but intelligently, wisely, and compassionately. That by doing so, we offer our own martyrdom, so to say. Because to suffer, as Buddha very correctly pointed out, it's something that happens all over the place. From the ant to the future Buddha, to the Bodhisattva themselves, everything that is alive suffers. But that suffering can be devoted to something. It can serve a greater cause. It can be part of a situation, of a scheme that will bring about a greater good. And that is, I think, what we need to keep in mind on this particular weekend, that we owe a debt of gratitude to those who one way or the other have sacrificed their lives to something greater, to something better, to something freer, to something more promising, and thereby have brought more good into a reality that on its own does not contain an awful lot of good. The good kind of has to be put into this world. Then it'll be there. Who is going to put it there? Us, if possible. If not, well, maybe next time around, or whatever the case may be. But these are important issues. The very term, I really got to quit, the real term sacrifice, sacrificium, is making something holy. So by way of offering up their lives, the martyrs have made the life in the world holier than it was before, and have improved the amount of holiness that is in the world. And we should keep that in mind, and we should try to incorporate that, hopefully not in a bloody way, but nevertheless in the spirit of offering our lives and experiencing various forms of martyrdom for a greater, for a better, for a lovelier cause than the one that we may be possessing at this particular time. So, let's try to keep, these are considerations that can be applied to many things, to when we celebrate nationally all the soldiers who have died in the various wars and so on. These are all people whose lives were taken in a greater and in a holier cause. And that needs to be recognized and prayed for and thereby brought into our consciousness as well and as often as possible. And so may the mystery of that which hangs twixt heaven and earth descend upon us and remain with us always. Amen.